Another short devlog today, in an attempt to try and keep videos more consistent. This time there's been quite a lot of code change to get everything working, and less gameplay content. I started off creating a demo for the last devlog. I made a rough menu with an option to transition to the first level, or to the more sandbox-like test area, and I uploaded this to itch. After some feedback from the demo, I decided to try changing the control scheme. Previously you had to left click to fire your rope, and right click to pull the rope in. There wasn't much point in not pulling the rope in, and newer players would try swinging the rope by moving back and forth, which isn't the optimal way. So to attempt to alleviate this, I made it so that when you let go of left click, it reels the rope in, to try and teach this instantly. The only way to leave a rope out now is to keep left click held, which I may remove in the future. After this, I went on to start looking at locking the player's moveset behind unlocking items. I spent a long time working on a shader for item pickups to make them stand out because I couldn't find a tutorial for a flashing item shader. I had a lot of issues in the first few hours just getting the images to display properly, and got to a point with the sprite changing colour over time, though I wanted a flash to move across the texture rather than the texture just changing colour. Eventually I was able to get an item shader working, and it looks like this. It uses a diagonal sprite and moves it across the existing sprite using tile offsets. I made it so collecting this bag would unlock the player's grapple ability. I then spent some time improving the movement on ladders, so that when you jump you wouldn't instantly grab the ladder if you were still holding up. And I ended up making it so that the player had to press up again after jumping, or they had to leave the ladder completely. I then reduced the size of the rope guideline, something I'll end up revisiting later on. Following this, I made it so that the bag being collected persisted between rooms, so you couldn't continue to pick up the item. I did this using static classes. I then ended up working on a save system that would load into this class. I don't have footage of this being developed because I seemed to go around in circles for hours and didn't seem to make much progress. I settled with storing the game data as JSON and then loading the save file when you load a file from the main menu. This then populates a static class that the rooms will read from to see what should be spawned. My JSON save file uses enums for object states, meaning I have states such as on, off, collected for the future. And here's a look at one of the save files. I made it so that pressing P would save for testing purposes, and this would also take a screenshot to be used on the main menu. And yes, this does mean you can manipulate your save data to show whatever image you want. I then went to make level designing a little bit easier for myself by making ladders scale dynamically. Previously I had a collider on each ladder sprite, and this made it so that it was a pain to set up ladders, and it required ladders to be of specific sizes. So I created a script to make the colliders scale correctly, and to allow for ladders of any size. Next, I created a delete icon because I was getting fed up of manually deleting my saves all the time, especially since they were becoming rapidly out of date. I then began working on a pop-up to warn you that you were deleting a file with the intention of it providing more information and focusing the user. Some information I added was total playtime, the date that the file was last modified, and I changed the tiles to be red when in delete mode. Finally, I added a timer that prevents you from deleting the file for 5 seconds to allow the user to read what's going on and prevent accidental deletion. After reading a comment on my last video saying the rope's guideline was distracting, I decided to try implementing a 2 reticle idea that I had going around in the back of my mind. It's going to take some getting used to my end before I can say whether I prefer one or the other, or if I need a different approach altogether. My 2 reticle approach is that you have one reticle that shows the max distance of the rope, or if there's a collision in the way it will choose that position instead, and the second reticle shows your actual mouse position. This means you can always see the mouse position even when aim assist is locking onto objects, and you can still have the same information as before. It's a little less obvious, so I am going to playtest it some more, but it's quite satisfying when the 2 reticles end up lining up together. Finally, I added the ladder climb animation. I'm not massively pleased with it, but it's at least something for now. I also made it so that the player's sprite stops in a more realistic spot at the top of the ladder, so the player isn't floating on top of it. There was then just a lot of bug fixing throughout, such as preventing carrying items up ladders, preventing the rope being used while on a ladder, making the loading screen be on a separate screen to the UI so I could use it on the main menu, and much more. I hope you enjoyed this small update. Thanks for watching.